What do you do when the family business that you saved, the hotel you transformed, is handed to someone else? Claire had spent years working tirelessly to restore Mountain Pine Lodge, pouring her heart and soul into every detail. But when her parents announced her brother Ethan as the new CEO, she was blindsided. This wasn't just about a promotion, it was a betrayal. Claire's sacrifice and success were brushed aside. Now, she faced a choice. Keep fighting for recognition or build something entirely her own. Stay tuned to find out how Claire takes control of her future, and don't forget to subscribe for more compelling stories. What do you mean Ethan will be CEO? My voice echoed through the newly renovated lobby, the sound bouncing off the modern, mountain-inspired decor I had spent months perfecting. Every inch of this place had my fingerprints on it, every detail, every choice. And yet, here I was, standing in the center of the room, watching my family hand it all to Ethan. Mom's dismissive wave felt like a slap in the face. "Claire, honey, your brother has more natural leadership ability. You're too detail-oriented," she said, as if explaining something to a child. That's when Ethan strolled in, hands casually shoved into his pockets, wearing that smug smile I had seen since we were kids. "Hey sis, don't take it personally. Someone needs to handle the day-to-day stuff while I focus on the bigger picture." I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't just a promotion, it was a betrayal. My name is Emily Anderson, and at 52, I never thought I'd find myself fighting for recognition in my own family's business. After 20 successful years in hotel management in Chicago, I gave up everything to come home to Colorado and save our struggling family hotel. The irony? I was the only one with real hospitality experience, while Ethan had bounced between jobs, never holding one longer than a year. Here's what really gets me. 8 months ago, my dad called me in tears, saying they were weeks away from bankruptcy. I didn't hesitate. I sold my condo in Chicago, cashed in my savings, and came home to help. The hotel was stuck in a time warp. Outdated decor, no social media presence, and reviews that made me cringe. I worked day and night to modernize everything from the reservation system to the lobby furniture. God knows how many nights I spent hunched over spreadsheets, negotiating with suppliers, and training staff. I even used my industry connections to get us featured in travel magazines, and it worked. The transformation was incredible. The Mountain Pine Lodge went from a 2-star nightmare to the talk of the town. Bookings doubled, and for the first time in years, we were actually turning a profit. Every detail, from the locally sourced artwork to the upgraded amenities, was chosen to create an unforgettable guest experience. But standing here now, watching Ethan smirk while my parents hand him everything I've worked for, I realize it never mattered to them. The worst part? They're announcing his promotion at tonight's staff meeting, the same meeting where I was supposed to present our record-breaking quarterly results. I can feel the eyes of our employees on me, especially Linda, our head housekeeper, who has been here for 20 years. They all know who really turned this place around, but, like me, they're forced to stand here and watch this farce play out, pretending this is somehow normal or fair. Let me take you back a bit to understand how we got here. The Mountain Pine Lodge has been in our family since my grandparents built it in 1971. I basically grew up in these halls, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. While other kids played house, I was helping Mom with check-ins and watching Dad handle maintenance issues. The hotel was my second home, and I loved every minute of it. But Ethan? He was different. 3 years younger than me, he never showed any interest in the family business. While I was studying hospitality management in college, he was bouncing between majors first architecture, then business, finally dropping out altogether to find himself. Mom and Dad never seemed bothered by this. "He's just creative," they'd say. "He needs time to figure things out." Meanwhile, I was building my career in Chicago, working my way up from front desk manager to regional director for a major hotel chain. Every success I had was met with lukewarm congratulations from my family. "That's nice, dear, but when are you coming home? When are you getting married?" It was never enough. When Dad called about the hotel's financial troubles, I knew exactly what needed to be done. The place was hemorrhaging money, outdated systems, inefficient processes, no real marketing strategy. The reviews online were brutal. "Stuck in the past, needs major updating, not worth the price." It broke my heart to see my family's legacy crumbling. I took a leave of absence from my job in Chicago, which eventually turned into a resignation, and dove headfirst into the rescue mission. The first month was just damage control, fixing broken equipment, updating the booking system, training staff on basic customer service. I dipped into my savings to replace the ancient carpeting and give the lobby a facelift. Every penny I spent was carefully calculated to maximize return on investment. What really gets me is that Ethan wasn't even here during all this. He was off in Denver, supposedly networking, but really just partying with his friends. He'd show up occasionally for family dinners, make a few vague suggestions about modernizing our approach, and disappear again. Yet somehow, in my parents' eyes, his occasional input was just as valuable as my daily grind. I kept telling myself it would be worth it, that once they saw the results, the improved ratings, the increased bookings, the positive reviews, they'd finally recognize my value. I guess I should have known better. The past 3 weeks have been a nightmare. Ethan struts around like he owns the place, making changes left and right without any understanding of how a hotel actually works. Just yesterday, he decided to cut our continental breakfast service to save money, apparently oblivious to the fact that our breakfast ratings are one of our biggest selling points. When I tried to show him the guest satisfaction data, he just laughed and said, "Numbers aren't everything, sis." But what really pushed me over the edge happened this morning. I walked in to find him firing Karen, our head of housekeeping who's been with us for 15 years. His reason? She wasn't flexible enough about his new scheduling system, a system that would have left us dangerously understaffed during peak checkout times. I managed to intervene and save her job, but the look of humiliation on her face will haunt me for a long time. I tried talking to Mom and Dad about it. I brought spreadsheets showing our progress, guest reviews praising our recent improvements, even financial projections for the next quarter. Dad just stared at his coffee, while Mom patted my hand and said, "Dear, you need to give your brother time to find his footing. He has such wonderful ideas." That's when I saw the for sale sign on the old Riverside Lodge as I was driving home. For years, it had been our main competitor, but it had fallen into disrepair the season before. I pulled into the parking lot, my mind racing. The property had so much untapped potential. Better views than our hotel, closer to the ski slopes, and a much larger spa space. Sure, it needed work, but I knew exactly what I would do with it. I sat in my car for almost an hour, staring at that sign. My mind wasn't just on the building. It was on every moment my parents had overlooked me in favor of Ethan, every achievement dismissed, every suggestion second-guessed, every contribution minimized. Something inside me snapped, or maybe it finally clicked into place. Without thinking twice, I called my realtor right there in the parking lot. The owners were eager to sell, and with my savings and stellar credit rating, I could make it happen. By the time I drove home, I had already scheduled a viewing for the next morning. For the first time in months, I felt energized, excited even. I wouldn't have to watch Ethan tear down everything I had worked so hard to build. Instead, I was going to build something new, something completely mine. Let them see what they gave up when they chose him over me. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. I threw myself into transforming the Riverside Lodge into something extraordinary. While Ethan was busy throwing parties at Mountain Pine Lodge, I was on site working with contractors, redesigning spaces, and assembling a team of top-tier hospitality professionals. I named it the Summit. Maybe a bit on the nose, but I wanted everyone to know exactly what I was aiming for. Word spread fast. Some people in town called me spiteful for competing against my own family. Others, especially those who'd worked with me at Mountain Pine, quietly cheered me on. My parents tried guilt-tripping me at first. "How could you do this to your brother? To us?" Mom would ask during our increasingly rare family dinners. I'd just smile and change the subject. Meanwhile, Ethan's mismanagement was starting to take its toll at Mountain Pine Lodge. Their reviews began to plummet, complaints about inconsistent service, maintenance issues, even cleanliness problems. 3 longtime staff members quit within the first month of his leadership. I heard through the grapevine that they had to slash their rates just to maintain occupancy. The Summit's grand opening was exactly 6 months after that fateful day in the lobby. I'll never forget my family's faces when they walked in. Mom's tight smile barely hiding her shock, Dad's wide eyes taking in the packed house, and Ethan's barely concealed anger. The local paper was there, taking photos and interviewing guests about Aspen's newest luxury destination. "You're trying to destroy us," Ethan hissed when he cornered me by the bar. "This is a direct attack on our family." I smiled, the calm in my voice almost unnerving. "No, Ethan. This is me succeeding despite our family." The contrast between the two hotels couldn't have been starker. While Mountain Pine Lodge struggled with basic maintenance, the Summit was making waves with its eco-friendly initiatives and luxury amenities. Every detail I had dreamed of implementing at the family hotel, everything that had been shot down, was now a reality here. From the locally sourced restaurant menu to the state-of-the-art spa facilities, everything was exactly as I had envisioned. But success came with its own set of challenges. Other hotels started copying our innovative booking system. People who had once been friendly started whispering behind my back about how I was tearing the family apart. Even some of my loyal guests from Mountain Pine Lodge expressed guilt about choosing sides. The real challenges came as the Summit gained momentum. Former vendors from Mountain Pine started getting pressure not to work with me. Mom had a powerful social circle in town, and suddenly, some longtime family friends stopped meeting me for our usual coffee dates. I even lost my spot on the local tourism board due to a supposed conflict of interest. But I wasn't about to let small-town politics derail everything I had built. When local vendors hesitated, I found better ones in Denver. When the tourism board dropped me, I focused on building direct relationships with ski tour operators. Every obstacle they threw at me only pushed me to be more innovative, more determined. Then came the biggest test of all. Mom and Dad showed up at my office one morning looking worried. The bank was threatening to call Mountain Pine's loans. Ethan's mismanagement had finally caught up with them. They wanted me to come back, not as CEO, of course, but to help Ethan learn the ropes. "We're family," Mom pleaded. "You can't just let the hotel fail." See, I looked at them both, sitting across from my desk in the office I'd built myself, and felt strangely calm. "I offered to help 8 months ago," I replied. "You chose Ethan. Now you have to live with that choice." Dad tried a different approach. "Think about your grandfather's legacy," he said quietly. "This hotel has been in our family for generations." "And I tried to preserve that legacy," I shot back. "You're the ones who handed it to someone who treats it like his personal playground." The whispers around town got nastier after that. I was the ungrateful daughter, the bitter sister, the woman who'd turn against her own family out of spite. Some days those rumors hurt more than I'd like to admit. But every morning I'd walk into the Summit's lobby, see my vision come to life, and know I'd made the right choice. My team became my new family. Many were former Mountain Pine employees who jumped ship, tired of Ethan's chaotic management style. They understood what I was building here wasn't about revenge, it was about creating something meaningful, something we could all be proud of. The breaking point came during the annual Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards. The Summit was nominated for Best New Boutique Hotel, and Mountain Pine Lodge was conspicuously absent from any category. I sat in the ballroom, surrounded by my team, when they announced our win. As I walked to the stage, I caught sight of my parents in the back of the room. They had shown up unannounced, probably expecting to support our family hotel, as they had for years. The look on their faces told me everything. Mom was fighting back tears, and Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years. Ethan wasn't there. He had stopped attending industry events months ago, dismissing them as popularity contests. But everyone in that room knew what this moment meant. The student had officially surpassed the teacher. The detail-oriented daughter had built something better than the family legacy they had refused to trust her with. During my acceptance speech, I thanked my team, our guests, and even mentioned Mountain Pine Lodge, where I first fell in love with hospitality. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, a subtle ripple telling me they caught my dig. But it was the conversation afterward that really changed everything. A renowned travel magazine editor approached me for an interview. As we talked about the Summit's success, my parents hovered nearby, clearly listening. They heard every word as I described my journey, including how being passed over for CEO had pushed me to build something of my own. Sometimes the best success stories come from being underestimated, I said, loud enough for them to hear. That evening, the magazine editor told me they would be naming the Summit the best boutique hotel in the Rockies in their upcoming issue. The same issue would feature a piece on traditional hotels struggling to adapt, with Mountain Pine Lodge as their prime example. When the article came out, it hit our small town like a bomb. All the whispers about me being spiteful had to stop. The truth was clear. I had built something extraordinary while Mountain Pine Lodge was faltering, not because of me, but because of their own poor decisions. Looking back on everything, it's hard not to feel a mix of emotions. Part of me still hurts from the way my parents treated me, dismissing all I had done as if it meant nothing. But the bigger part of me feels liberated. I'm finally living life on my terms, not waiting for someone else's validation. When I walk into the Summit every morning, I'm reminded of what I've built with my own 2 hands. The vibrant lobby buzzes with life guests chatting excitedly about their plans for the day, staff moving efficiently with warm smiles. The faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingles with the crisp mountain air that drifts in whenever the doors open. It's everything I had wanted Mountain Pine Lodge to be, and seeing the Summit thrive gives me a deep sense of pride. My team at the Summit has become my family in ways I never expected. Many of them, like Linda and Isabella, are former employees of my parents' hotel who left because they saw the same lack of leadership I did. They've been instrumental in making the Summit a success, and their loyalty humbles me. Linda often jokes that she finally feels like her experience and ideas are valued, and I know exactly how she feels. Outside of work, I've started reconnecting with old friends. For years, I was so wrapped up in trying to prove myself to my parents that I let important relationships slip away. Now, I'm making time for coffee dates and hikes, rebuilding those connections. Some people from the town who initially criticized my decision to compete with my family have even come around, admitting they admire what I've accomplished. I've also started to find my place within the community again. Hosting events at the Summit has helped me reestablish old bonds and even create new ones. Just last month, we held a fundraiser for the local animal shelter in our new event space, and it was a huge success. Seeing people come together for a good cause reminded me why I wanted to work in hospitality in the first place, to create spaces that bring people joy and comfort. But it's not all perfect. There are moments, especially on quiet evenings, when I think about my parents and Ethan. As much as they've hurt me, I wish things could be different. I've caught myself wondering if they've ever truly understood the sacrifices I made to save our family's legacy. Still, I've come to realize that their approval isn't something I need anymore. My success, my happiness, they're mine, and no one can take them away. For so long, I lived in the shadow of their expectations, but now I'm finally standing in my own light. It was about 3 weeks after the Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards when my parents finally reached out again. They asked me to come over for dinner, just the 3 of us. I hesitated for a moment but decided to go. I wanted to hear what they had to say, even though I wasn't holding my breath for a real apology. When I arrived at the house, the atmosphere was different. My mom greeted me with a nervous smile, and my dad avoided eye contact, fiddling with his watch the way he always did when he was uncomfortable. Over dinner, they started with small talk, how the weather was unusually warm for the season, how they'd heard about the Summit's latest 5-star review. I could tell they were building up to something. Finally, my dad cleared his throat and said, "CLA, we wanted to say we're proud of what you've accomplished." My mom quickly added, "We know we haven't always shown it, but we do recognize how much work you've put into the Summit. It's remarkable." I wanted to feel happy about their words, but instead, they landed flat. It felt like too little, too late, especially after years of being dismissed. I nodded, but I already knew what was coming next. Sure enough, my mom jumped right into it. "Ethan's been struggling. The hotel isn't doing well, and he's in over his head. We were wondering if you could maybe guide him, help us get things back on track." For a moment, I didn't say anything. I let their words hang in the air as I really looked at them, my mom, her carefully manicured nails gripping her wine glass a little too tightly, and my dad staring at the tablecloth as if it might hold the answers to all their problems. "I offered to help a year ago," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I gave up my life in Chicago to save Mountain Pine Lodge. You chose to put Ethan in charge, knowing he wasn't ready, knowing I had the experience to make it succeed. You didn't want my leadership then, and now that things have fallen apart, you're asking me to step in. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. My mom opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand to stop her. I'll give you advice if you want it. I can recommend strategies, suppliers, even training programs for the staff. But I'm not coming back to fix what Ethan has broken. That's not my responsibility anymore. They didn't know what to say. My dad muttered something about understanding my position, but his disappointment was clear. My mom, on the other hand, looked like she wanted to argue more, but for once, she didn't push it. Driving home that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. Setting those boundaries wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I wasn't going to keep bending over backward to make my parents happy or cleaning up Ethan's messes. I was choosing myself, my happiness, and my future. Over the next few weeks, I noticed a shift in how I carried myself. Saying no to my parents had given me the confidence to enforce boundaries in other areas of my life, too. I stopped over-explaining my decisions to people, whether it was about work or personal choices. I became more comfortable letting go of relationships that no longer served me, instead focusing on the ones that brought me joy and support. At the summit, we hit new milestones. Our occupancy rates were the highest in the region, and we began receiving inquiries from other boutique hotel owners asking for consulting advice. Meanwhile, my parents' hotel continued to decline. I heard they finally hired a professional hospitality consultant to try to turn things around. Ethan and I barely spoke, and I was okay with that. He didn't apologize or acknowledge what had happened, but I no longer needed him to. His bitterness was his burden to carry, not mine. The summit had become a reflection of everything I had worked for, my resilience, my vision, my independence, and as it flourished, so did I. One morning, standing in the lobby of the summit, I watched as sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow over the modern decor I had designed. A family walked past, laughing as they planned their day, while one of my staff expertly handed a couple their itinerary for a scenic snowshoe hike. It hit me in that moment how far I had come, not just professionally, but personally. For years, I had measured my worth by my parents' approval, by their ability to see and acknowledge my contributions. But now, I realized I didn't need that anymore. What I had built here wasn't just a hotel. It was a testament to my resilience, my creativity, and my ability to thrive despite the challenges thrown my way. The journey had been hard. Letting go of the hope that my family would change had been painful, but it also freed me. I no longer felt tied to the weight of their expectations or their dismissal. Instead, I felt proud. Proud of what I had created, proud of the team I had cultivated, and proud of the life I was living. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. The Regional Hospitality Awards ceremony was the kind of event I used to dream about attending. The room was buzzing with excitement, filled with industry leaders, journalists, and hotel owners from across the state. As the announcer began to list the nominees for Boutique Hotel of the Year, I caught a glimpse of my mom and dad seated toward the back of the room. Their faces were unreadable, but I could sense the weight of what this moment meant to all of us. When the summit was announced as the winner, the room erupted into applause. My team cheered as I walked to the stage, my heart pounding as I accepted the award. I glanced at my parents. My dad gave me a small nod, and my mom's eyes glistened with unshed tears. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was acknowledgement, something I'd long since stopped expecting, but still appreciated in its own way. After the ceremony, I joined my team in celebrating. My parents didn't approach me, and I didn't go to them. This was my moment, and I wanted to share it with the people who had helped me achieve it. I felt truly free. Free from the need for their approval. Free from the shadows of their choices. Success wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I was capable, deserving, and enough. And as I raised a glass with my team that night, I knew I'd finally found peace. What do you do when the family you've always tried to please finally shows you just how little they value your contributions? When the hard work, dedication, and sacrifices you made are all overlooked in favor of someone who's never had to put in the effort? Emily spent years trying to earn her parents' approval, proving herself time and again with every achievement, every success. She turned around a dying business, saved their legacy, and built something incredible. But instead of recognizing her efforts, they handed it all to Ethan, the son who never cared about the family business. They chose him, and when everything fell apart, they came crawling back, expecting her to clean up his mess. But Emily made a decision that changed everything. She set boundaries. She said no. She walked away from the endless manipulation and chose herself. She built the Summit, a hotel that became everything Mountain Pine Lodge could have been if they had just trusted her from the start. And when her family tried to make her feel guilty, she didn't budge. Her success was her own, and she was finally living life on her terms. So here's the question. When people dismiss your worth, when they take you for granted, do you keep trying to win their approval, or do you walk away and build something even better? Let's talk about it in the comments. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
How could you? I screamed, my voice echoing through the empty lot where our family home once stood. All that remained was a pile of rubble. I spotted Trent casually leaning against his BMW, sipping his daily Starbucks as he scrolled on his phone without a care in the world. He slowly looked up. "Oh, hey, babe. Welcome back," he said flatly. "While you were off finding yourself at that retreat, I took care of a little house project for us." My hands trembled and tears stung my eyes. I had just returned from a wellness retreat in the mountains, hoping to regain my strength after losing Mom. Now I came home to this violation. "A little project? Trent, this was our home," I shouted. "You demolished our 25-year life without even telling me?" He shoved his phone in his suit pocket and strode towards me, his imposing figure casting a shadow my way. I stood firm. "Eliza, that old place was getting run down anyway, and we could really use your inheritance money to build ourselves a nice new modern home." His voice turned from nonchalant to a growl. I flashed back to our wedding day when I saw that sparkle in his eyes. Now all I saw was cold, hard greed. "My inheritance? Is that what this is about?" I asked in disbelief. "You destroyed our family home, my memories with Mom, just to get your hands on my money?" "Our money, or at least it should be." Trent fired back, his temper rising. "I'm fed up with you keeping everything separate. The inheritance, your savings. We're married. After everything I've given you, the luxury cars, the country club membership, our children's college funds, you owe me." I stood speechless, rage and heartbreak swirling inside me. This was the man I once loved with my full heart. Lucas and Sophie's father. Now he was a stranger consumed by avarice. "Trent, you supported this family because it's your responsibility, not some favor you did me. I was the one working long hours in the classroom while you wined and dined your CEO friends." My voice grew louder, bolstered by a lifetime's worth of suppressed resentment. "Well, one of us had to bring money into this family, though it seems teaching second graders doesn't pay like it used to," he scoffed. That tore it. I swung my hand swiftly, slapping him hard across the face. The sound cracked through the empty space where warm family memories once echoed. For a moment his face registered shock, then his lips curled into a menacing smile. "You'll regret that, Eliza," he growled, stomping back towards his flashy car. "That inheritance is mine. You can make this easy or difficult, but either way, I'll get what I deserve." I stood alone among the ruins of my life, my mother gone, my home demolished, my husband transformed into a monster. I had dedicated years to my family, putting their needs before my own. Now Trent threatened to steal my last ounce of security, convinced he was owed a cut simply for being my spouse. I sank down atop a pile of gravel that once supported our living room. This man thought he could scare me into submission, believing I'd back down as I always had. The old Eliza may have acquiesced, terrified of conflict and desperate to keep the peace. But losing Mom showed me how fragile life was. I refused to surrender myself any longer. Gripping a chunk of drywall that displayed Lucas's childhood height measurements, I made a vow. Trent underestimated my strength if he expected me to hand everything over. I would fight with my last breath to protect myself and my children. With tears drying and resolve hardening, I marched forward, the demolition debris crunched under my feet, remnants of the past, fuel for my future. I was battered but not broken. Now focused by righteous fury, I pulled out my phone to call the one person I knew would help. "Hello, Claire?" It's Eliza. I hope you still have room on your caseload because I need the best divorce lawyer in town. Sitting across from Claire over lukewarm coffees, I delved back into memories I had long suppressed. Eliza, walk me through your relationship history with Trent, Claire said gently, her voice belying her reputation as a bulldog in the courtroom. I closed my eyes, transported back over 2 decades prior. It was 1998, and at 23 years old, I was focused on kickstarting my teaching career. Trent was an up-and-coming sales executive I met through family friends. Confident and charismatic, he swept me off my feet quickly. We married within a year, and by 30, I had left my job to focus on raising our children full-time. It was always my dream to be a mom. Trent was thrilled, too. He wanted me home, tending to the kids, while he traveled for work. I strived to be the perfect wife and mother. My parents helped tremendously while Trent was away. We were a close, loving family, up until 6 months ago when we lost my father unexpectedly. My mother's health, then, took a sharp decline, following Dad's passing. I'm so sorry, Eliza. Claire offered gently. That must have been an incredibly painful time for you. How did Trent respond? I sighed, anger rising as I replayed his apathetic behavior in my mind. Honestly, Trent grew increasingly impatient and cold. He hated that I was preoccupied caring for my grieving mother. He began making callous comments about me, playing nurse too much. Claire frowned, jotting notes on her legal pad. And he provided no emotional support during this period? None whatsoever. If anything, he often compounded my grief with his cruel reactions. My mind drifted back to one piercing incident. Mom and I were reviewing some old photo albums together, laughing and crying as we relived nostalgic memories. Trent came home unexpectedly early from a work trip. Is this what my house has turned into? A pity party patch? He had grumbled. Trent, I scolded, have some compassion. Mom just lost her husband of 40 years. And I just want my wife back. This melancholy scene needs to end. He stormed off to pour himself a scotch. Mom's fragile smile had vanished instantly, replaced by resigned sadness. We didn't look at the albums again. I shook my head, drawn back to the present moment across from Claire. So there you have it. The man I once loved disappeared, consumed entirely by selfishness. And now? My voice quivered as I recounted the image seared into my mind of our demolished home, of Trent's unconscionable betrayal. Claire leaned forward, her expression shifting to righteous anger. Don't worry, Eliza. We're going to make him pay. Over the next weeks, under Claire's counsel, I dug up documents, financial records, and Trent's vicious text messages. She was confident this evidence would land a favorable judgment. We sat across her wide oak desk reviewing our plan when Claire's phone lit up. She glanced at the screen and her eyebrows shot up. Well, speak of the devil. It's a text from Trent. He says he wants to meet to discuss things civilly. He must have gotten wind that you lawyered up. Claire let out an icy laugh. My stomach churned, imagining his scheme. There's no way I'm agreeing to some fake meeting just for him to intimidate me more. I know, Claire agreed. She stared pensively at her phone screen as a sly smile crept across her face. The wheels were clearly spinning behind her intelligent eyes. Actually, Eliza, I have an idea. She leaned forward, resolve emanating from her. What if we use this text to set a little trap for your scheming husband? I nodded cautiously as she detailed a plan to meet Trent under the guise of good faith negotiations. But with Claire secretly recording the conversation, we could obtain hard proof of Trent's coercion and threats. My anxiety melted into tentative relief at the finally holding him accountable. As we wrapped up final preparations for the clandestine meeting, I turned to Claire, new confidence rising within me. Let's do this. It's time for that snake to get exactly what he deserves. Claire smiled knowingly and put a steadying hand on my shoulder. Showtime! My hands trembled as I stared down at the text from Trent, confirming our clandestine meeting spot, a discreet cafe downtown far from prying eyes. Though Claire and I had devised an airtight plan to expose his deceit, doubt still gnawed at my core. What verbal assaults awaited me? How far would Trent go to pressure me into relinquishing control of my inheritance? I steeled my nerves, refusing to let past anxiety dictate my actions now. With my family's legacy and financial future at stake, failure was not an option. I arrived early at the nondescript cafe and selected a quiet corner booth, my back to the wall for full visual coverage. I set my phone on the table, discreetly pressing record before concealing it behind a napkin. The bait was laid for Trent's inevitable tirade. Now confident our trap was set, I waited. Right on cue, 15 minutes late as always, Trent sauntered in, a smug look plastered across his handsome yet hardened face. I gestured politely to the seat across from me. Showtime. Well, Eliza, isn't this mature of us to handle things civilly? Trent offered with mock sincerity. I nearly gagged at his attempt to take the high road after demolishing our family home without notice. Instead, I offered a flat smile. Yes, I think it's important we have an open and honest conversation about all this. Trent shifted, clearly unsettled by my nonplussed reaction. He was likely expecting a much more volatile response he could redirect with manipulation as he had done so many times before. Good. Let him squirm a bit. I broke the silence after an awkward beat. I'll cut right to the chase, Trent. Are you willing to negotiate fairly on separation terms? I kept my tone cool yet firm. At this, Trent sneered. The polite facade instantly melted away. Separation? He spat the word. You must be joking. I hope you're not expecting me to agree to anything that compromises my financial future. Compromises his future? Typical Trent. Money and status were all that mattered to him. Certainly not family. I pressed on calmly. I'm talking about splitting things equitably between us. Surely we can be reasonable adults. Trent pounded his fist on the table, rattling the coffee mugs and startling patrons at other tables. No, Eliza, I will not agree to walk away empty-handed. Not after wasting the prime of my career on this lackluster marriage, he jabbed bitterly. You will sign over your inheritance, or I'll make you regret ever threatening this divorce. And there it was, no pretense anymore about preserving our family or saving our marriage. Trent laid bare his singular goal, getting his greedy hands on what he felt he deserved. Behind his macho threats, though, I detected desperation. His future fortune and reputation were at stake if he couldn't manipulate me into conceding. This time he underestimated my resolve. I kept my tone measured. Are you quite finished with your tirade? Because nothing you say will coerce me into just handing everything over. I'm fully prepared for a legal battle. Trent's face reddened, his temper rising. But I recognized the flash of fear behind his harsh glare. My stoic confidence had caught him off guard. You entitled, washed-up loser, he sputtered. I made you everything you have, and this is the thanks I get? You'll regret this, Eliza. No one steals my future. With that, Trent shoved his chair back forcefully, grabbed his jacket, and stormed out, steaming. My hands were trembling again, though this time with relief and triumph. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, to stop the recording. Not only did I hold firm in my refusal to cave to his threats, I now had them all on tape. No more hiding behind a charming veneer. The world would soon hear Trent's true venomous nature. For the first time in months, I broke into a grin. My tormentor's downfall was imminent. With Claire masterfully pulling legal strings and karma beginning to strike back at Trent for his deceit, I had set the stage for his reckoning. I almost pitied the poor guy if he wasn't such a loathsome snake, willing to crush his own family for personal gain. Oh well, no mercy for the selfish fool. After settling my bill, I strode confidently out the door towards a future that shined brighter by the minute. My resolve was steeled for the fight ahead. Trent would bitterly regret the day he crossed me. I sighed, seeing the caller ID flash Trent for the third time that morning. After ignoring his barrage of petty texts, he was apparently resorting to voice messages to vent his frustration. My finger hovered over the decline button when a thought struck me. Trent's behavior had become increasingly erratic and abusive. Building a record of evidence couldn't hurt for the looming legal battle. I answered coolly, "What do you need, Trent?" His voice came through the speaker shrill and commanding. "We need to discuss funeral arrangements for your mother. I already contacted my preferred venue and caterer and put a deposit down. I figured you'd be too emotional to handle planning." My breath caught in my throat. The audacity after months of dismissing my grief, now assuming control and decision-making because I was too hysterical? I managed a terse response. "Actually, Trent, I've already made arrangements with Mom's church and her closest friends are helping coordinate everything. but I'm sure your caterer refunds deposits if you ask nicely. I couldn't help the subtle jab, indicating his presumptuous planning was not required or appreciated. An exasperated sigh followed by a lengthy pause echoed from the phone. When Trent spoke again, any veil of compassion had vanished, revealing biting contempt. You always were helpless when it came to executive decisions. I don't know why I'm surprised you'd leave the planning to a bunch of old church biddies barely clinging to life themselves. I clenched my phone tightly, holding back a spew of enraged curses. Breathe, Eliza. His cruelty, shocking as it may sound on tape, could be critical evidence if he tried claiming I was the bitter, unreasonable one later. I responded evenly. I'm organizing this funeral in alignment with Mom's wishes, something you never bothered to learn in 25 years together. She will be honored respectfully. Please just let me handle this, Trent. Another tense pause followed. For a moment I thought he may have hung up. Then came a chilling, clipped reply. Fine, Eliza. Throw your quaint little funeral tea party. But don't expect me to stand around making small talk with those religious fanatics, and not a penny extra from my accounts. The line clicked dead. I released a shuddering breath and collapsed onto our bed, which Trent had strategically left stripped of all bedding. Even in death, he continued finding new psychological torture methods. Over the next days, his cruelty only crescendoed. As I sorted through Mom's belongings with supportive friends, he ridiculed the task as feeble sentimentality. When our son Lucas came to help with cleaning, Trent's calm facade broke. Don't you have exams to be focusing on instead of wasting time on redundant housework? He had berated our stunned son. All this could have simply been hauled off to Goodwill instead of drama queen Eliza's tedious emotional purge. Lucas retreated from the house quickly after that, clearly pained by his father's escalating bitterness. My heart broke, envisioning the distance growing between Trent and the children. He was willing to sever even these bonds in his rabid pursuit of assets and pride. The day of Mom's funeral arrived, gray and weary, mimicking my turbulent mindset. As I dressed in a simple black gown, Trent emerged shirtless, sipping his morning beer. His appearance mirrored the disregard he had shown Mom even while alive. Give my well wishes to the brainwashed Bible Brigade, he offered snidely. Hot tears stung behind my eyes. I slipped silently out the door into the drizzling rain. The showers disguised streaming tears as I drove to the church. Surrounded by true loved ones there, the service was filled with tender moments, honoring Mom's generous soul. Trent's absence went largely unnoticed. While it pained me he had abandoned us at this sacred time, Trent's recurring callous treatment solidified my will. Any lingering hesitation to push forward on severing ties vanished. His efforts to intimidate me into obedience had only affirmed suspicions of abuse for years. Now, with clear-cut proof, I was determined to fight back legally. As we laid Mom's rose-adorned casket to rest beside Dad, the rain subsided, leaving glimmering puddles in the cemetery grass. The clouds parted, revealing hints of hopeful blue skies beyond life's storms. Gazing into the light, I knew Mom and Dad were cheering me on proudly, and Trent's reckoning awaited on the horizon. Sitting across from Claire, reviewing the latest legal documents, I finally felt empowered and in control. Though Trent continued his petty power moves, I now had the law on my side. With the testimony and evidence you've provided, we've compiled an ironclad case, Claire assured me, gathering up papers into a leather folio. Her fiery confidence fueled my own. I'm certain the judge will rule in your favor regarding financial separation, and with documented proof of emotional abuse, you'll easily be granted full custody of your children. A wave of relief washed over me at this prospect. Securing Lucas and Sophie's well-being through the volatile divorce was my priority. Trent's influence had become downright toxic. Protecting them legally would provide peace of mind. You've worked wonders, Claire, I offered sincerely. I honestly don't know if I could have come out on top in this fight without you navigating the complex legal channels. Claire smiled humbly, handing me copies of the documents. I'm happy to play my part, but truly, Eliza, your courage and refusal to be intimidated is what's winning the day here. Don't forget that inner strength. Her words resonated with my core. For so long I had minimized my resilience, believing Trent was the trailblazer. Now clarity revealed I was the foundation holding everything together behind the scenes, and I deserved equitable compensation for my sacrifices. Buoyed by this insight, I practically floated out the law office doors, ready to embrace the next phase with renewed moxie. My steps halted abruptly when I spotted Trent leaning smugly against my Subaru's driver's side door, preventing my entry. "Here we go again." "Well, isn't this cozy?" he offered sarcastically, gesturing to the law office. "Nothing like conspiring with shady lawyers instead of trying to salvage our sacred marriage vows." I scoffed at this warped perspective. I hardly think a healthy marriage involves one partner selfishly demanding assets and demolishing property without consent. "Now please move. You're blocking my car." Trent stepped defiantly in front of the handle as I reached to open it. His height had always given him an intimidation advantage. I refused to cower this time. "Not until you agree to a mediation session with a counselor," Trent demanded. "I'm sure once you explain yours fairly to an expert, they will set you straight about what you are entitled or not to." I nearly gagged at this attempt to silence me by making my protests seem irrational and uninformed. I glared directly at him with emboldened confidence. "I know precisely what I'm entitled to, Trent, and I have an extensive, well-documented legal team securing it without manipulation. You will not cheat me out of my due compensation." His smug veneer flickered briefly with doubt. My audacity clearly hit a nerve. Regaining composure, Trent pressed closer, his stale coffee breath assaulting my senses. "Careful, Eliza. You seem to have forgotten who ensured you lived so well all this time. Threaten my reputation and I'll reduce you to dirt." Though his words raised the hairs on my arms, I didn't flinch. We stood face to face in taut silence, twins titans at the peak of a perilous precipice. I broke the tension calmly. "Feel free to sling threats if it makes you feel powerful, Trent, but we both know you stand to lose far more than I do here." With strength belying my trembling core, I peered unwavering into his dark eyes. "Now for the last time. Get away from my vehicle. You no longer dictate my life." A charged beat passed where anything could have transpired. To my relief, Trent scowled bitterly, then stepped aside, grumbling. I maintained vigilant composure despite quaking inside, safely driving off without glancing back. Maintaining courage through intimidation tactics was not easy, but I realized the breadth of my fortitude, and nothing was stronger than a determined woman protecting her interests against a greedy bully. "Game on, Trent. Your reckoning awaits." I tapped my foot impatiently, glancing between my watch and the imposing courthouse doors. Claire and I had filed the paperwork, petitioning for financial separation over a month ago, and the court date had finally arrived. Yet despite the early hour, Trent was characteristically late, no doubt a feeble attempt to regain control by making me wait anxiously. Little did he know, I had reached a state of zen. The law was on my side. 15 tedious minutes later, Trent came swaggering up the marble steps, not a hair out of place in his arrogantly confident power suit. I offered a cordial smile. "Nice of you make an appearance, Trent. Shall we proceed?" He bristled at my unruffled demeanor, but nodded curtly. I led the way into the expansive courtroom as we took our respective places at the defendants' tables. Claire entered soon after, flanked by our other legal aides, nodding reassurance. I kept my breath steady, visualizing victory as the bailiff called court into session. This was it, Judgment Day, for Trent's deceit. The proceedings commenced efficiently, with Claire masterfully presenting our evidence of emotional abuse and financial coercion. The judge listened solemnly, eyes widening at particularly shocking voicemails from Trent maligning my character. I had to hand it to Claire. She had crafted an utterly unimpeachable case. After what seemed an eternity, the judge cleared her throat, peering sternly over spectacles. "In light of the comprehensive evidence provided, I hereby grant the petition for dissolution of shared finances. All assets and inheritance shall remain exclusive property of Eliza, the plaintiff." I nearly collapsed with relief and triumph. Glancing to my right, I noticed Trent turning a shade of crimson I hadn't witnessed since Sophie's terrible twos tantrums. Veins bulged from his neck as he sputtered incoherently, trying to interject. The gavel pounded authoritatively, silencing him. Sweet victory. "Additionally, in consideration of documented mental abuse, I'm granting Eliza full legal and physical custody of both minor children," the judge continued firmly. At this, Trent slammed his fists furiously on the tabletop, sending pens flying wildly. "This is outrageous," he roared, spit flying. "That money is rightfully mine, and you can't take my kids, Eliza." Before the bailiff could react, Trent sent the defendant's table crashing onto its side with a violent shove. He fixed his crazed eyes on me, shouting accusations as security restrained him. Rather than engage, I simply gathered my belongings calmly as he was dragged out, kicking and screaming. "You've made a grave mistake," he hollered among straining security guards. "I'll take back what's mine, Eliza. This isn't over." His lasting threats echoed down the marbled hall as I strode out to meet Claire with a confident smile. "Congratulations, Eliza," Claire grinned as we stepped into sunshine beyond the imposing columns. "You are now a very wealthy, single woman." And Trent's hysterics surely didn't help his appeal to the judge. Well done maintaining composure. I let out a deep exhale, feeling years of anxiety and oppression lifting away. "Thank you sincerely. I couldn't have navigated this without your counsel. In more ways than one," I chuckled. We exchanged relieved embraces before Claire headed off to handle newly freed up caseload. Meanwhile, I slid into my Subaru's driver's seat, finally feeling its true owner. Trent's desperate threats didn't faze my cooler state of mind. His burst of outrage proved powerless against the justice system, securing my rights irrevocably. Any sway he once held over me was crushed under the mighty gavel of truth. I turned the ignition key, feeling renewed energy course through the previously strained vehicle. Trent had monopolized the driver's seat of my life for too long. But with his recklessly controlling hands finally off the wheel, I cruised eagerly onward down the open road toward independence. "Mom, that creme brulee was amazing!" Lucas grinned, leaning back contentedly after our celebratory dinner at the upscale French bistro. "We definitely have to come back here." I smiled at my son, who was home on a short break before summer internships ramped up. With Trent temporarily absent from family life, the cloud of tension had lifted. Sophie squeezed my hand affectionately from across the table. "I'm so proud of you for standing up to Dad, Mom. You deserved that win in court," she offered sincerely. I swelled with gratitude to have my children close again without fear of callous comments shattering tender moments. As we strolled outside the restaurant, Lucas suddenly gripped my arm, nodding towards the bar next door. There sat Trent, half slumped on a stool, staring numbly at CNN, blaring predictions for an upcoming economic recession. Even from a distance, his unkempt appearance revealed a broken man. I felt Sophie's hand tense on my shoulder. "Let's go, Mom," she urged gently. I paused, taking in the scene of my once formidable opponent, diminished to a drunken shell of spite. His legacy and reputation apparently lay in shambles, much like the remains of our demolished home. Investors and elite executives had shunned him after his court outburst made salacious headlines. Rumor was his assets had taken a significant hit in the latest stock market plunge as well. The community backlash only amplified his downfall. "Karma's a beast, eh, Trent?" Lucas muttered. Seeing his disheveled father still sparked sadness behind the resentment in Lucas's eyes. Sophie linked her arm through his comfortingly as they walked ahead to gather an Uber. I stood frozen, gazing upon the aftermath of Trent's greed and hubris. Claire was right. He had far more to lose than me by refusing to compromise. Now, every manipulative scheme and sociopathic threat had come crashing down in a brutal reckoning. Hard times humbled even the proudest titans. Though my righteous anger towards Trent persisted, witnessing his self-destruction awakened traces of pity amongst the bitterness. Perhaps if he demonstrated true remorse and sought help for underlying issues driving his egocentric worldview. My sympathetic pondering was cut short when Trent glanced up blearily from his drink. His bloodshot eyes registered rage seeing me. He rose unsteadily and staggered over, wearing a twisted smirk. "Come to gloat, have you?" he slurred, whiskey breath assaulting my senses. "Little Miss Righteous Victor." Trent wobbled, but spite sharpened his words. I stood calmly, meeting his hollow glare. "No, Trent, just heading home after dinner with our kids, actually. I do hope you'll get the help you need." Before I could finish, Trent erupted in a spit-flying diatribe. "Save your sanctimonious talk. This is your fault, Eliza. Your petty comeuppance threats me destitute and despised." He swayed aggressively closer. "I lost everything because of your self-centered vengeance." Sensing the confrontation escalating, I stepped cautiously back, gesturing to the approaching bartender for assistance. Trent was clearly beyond logical exchange in his inebriated rage. His unhinged tirade continued, attracting shocked attention from passers-by. "Mark my words, Eliza. I will get even. Your little celebratory parade ends now?" He lunged towards me as the bartender grabbed him. I retreated quickly to where Lucas and Sophie stood horrified. Police sirens wailed from down the street, responding to calls about the disturbance. "Let's go home," I urged, ushering my shaken children away from the nightmarish scene. Glancing back, I glimpsed Trent being shoved into a squad car, drunkenly raging about comeuppance as they sped away. The vengeance Trent had poisonously plotted was now his own ruin, woven by greed. And despite his threats, watching him fade, unhinged and unwell in flashing police lights, I pitied more than feared the broken, bitter man. A year had passed since that tumultuous night, witnessing Trent unravel completely. His drunken threats persisted for months between jail sentences and court-ordered rehab sessions. But word was he had finally accepted a lenient sentence at an upstate center specializing in anger issues and financial disorders. With Trent's toxicity no longer poisoning my home space, I began envisioning how to rebuild, starting with restoring the literal foundation he had callously crushed. On a refreshingly mild Saturday morning, I stood smiling with Lucas and Sophie on the vacant lot where our family home once stood sturdy for decades. Claire snapped photos capturing the hopeful moment as we broke ground to construct a new dwelling, not haunted by residual darkness. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," Sophie repeated, squeezing my shoulder. "This is a fresh start for all of us." I surveyed the space, buzzing with construction crews hauling lumber, while Lucas and I discussed potential layouts. Trent's devastating demolishment had crushed more than bricks and mortar. But rising resilient from the rubble, I would forge new sanctuaries for my children, devoid of oppressive shadows. Over the next year, tangible rebuilding progressed in tandem with inner healing. With each golden beam raised and brick mortared in place, I sensed our spirits mending as well. Soon the lingering wounds from Trent's destruction would be more scar tissue than open gash. On a crisp autumn afternoon, I gathered with loved ones to celebrate the finished product, a gorgeous contemporary farmhouse blending vintage charm with sleek upgrades. Sophie and Lucas had invited college friends. Supportive relatives filled the home with infectious laughter. As caterers circulated with champagne to commemorate the occasion, I paused to admire photos adorning the fireplace mantel. Images of my parents smiled down, filled with eternal light and love despite their earthly absence. Gazing around at those present, additional missing faces stood out painfully. Trent's parents had shown their true colors, aligning firmly with their son despite incriminating evidence against him. And Trent himself sat stewing in isolation, still too prideful to take accountability. Their self-imposed misery was punishment enough. Occasional pangs of sadness resurfaced, missing the man Trent used to be before ambition consumed him. But focusing forward allowed me to appreciate life's everyday joys again, instead of dwelling on toxic relationships. Later, after guests had dispersed with hearty congratulations and housewarming bouquets, Sophie joined me on the front porch, gazing up at constellations glittering optimistically. She broke the pensive silence. "Dad sent me a brief letter today from the rehab center. It sounds like intensive counseling is helping him finally reflect more on the consequences of his actions." Though skeptical about authentic transformation from brief therapy, I nodded. "That's promising. Real change takes time, though." I hugged Sophie in closer. "But the most crucial relationships to fortify are right here, with people committed to lifting us higher." Sophie smiled up brightly through tears glinting in the moonlight. In her strength and sensitivity, my greatest co-creation glowed. She would perpetuate cycles of compassion, not malice. Together we sat in meditative silence, connected to forces intricately crafting redemption from ruin. Though scars remained, Trent's corrosion had only illuminated my resilient spirit. His darkness merely fertilized future flowers determined to keep blooming. I nearly spilled my wine when I saw him across the crowded gallery. Jace, my high school sweetheart who had disappeared without a trace 15 years ago. Our eyes locked and memories came flooding back. the dizzy excitement of young love, late nights full of laughter, promises of forever. Then the gut-wrenching confusion when he vanished unexpectedly. I watched Jace weave through the crowd toward me, still trim and handsome as ever, though time had etched faint lines at the corners of those piercing green eyes. "Marla," he said, "I can't believe it's you." His voice sent shivers down my spine. "You look incredible." I murmured awkward pleasantries, stunned by this ghost from my past. What was Jace doing back in Colorado Springs after all this time? I noticed no wedding ring on his finger and couldn't help but wonder if he was still the charming heartbreaker who had left me pining all those years ago. "What brings you here?" I managed. "My job. I'm a web designer now, freelance. Just got hired for a project here in town." He seemed nervous. I studied his face, searching for a clue to whether he had thought of me at all during our 15 years apart. Jace suggested grabbing dinner to catch up. I hesitated at first, but curiosity got the better of me. Over candlelit pasta, wine flowing freely, the conversation turned intensely personal. Jace revealed he had burned out on big city life in Chicago, tired of the rat race and shallow connections. Now here he was, hoping for a fresh start someplace more peaceful. "Maybe this chance meeting is the universe telling me I need to set down roots," he said earnestly. "Reconnect with what really matters." When his hand found mine across the table, my pulse quickened. I thought of my small but comfortable house, my position as project manager in my family's firm, the quiet predictability of my life. Jace's return felt like a spark of electricity jolting me out of complacency. By the end of the evening, we had exchanged numbers with a promise to meet again soon. I barely slept that night, my mind spinning. When Jace called the very next day, I said yes immediately to another date, and another after that. His affectionate attention was intoxicating, exactly what I thought I had left behind in my teen years. He whispered sweet nothings in my ear and showered me with compliments. I felt desired, cherished. Before I knew it, we were officially a couple, seeing each other multiple times a week. My friends were skeptical when they heard Jace was back on the scene. "Isn't he the one who disappeared without explanation?" Cleo said pointedly, "Be careful, Marla." But I brushed off their warnings. When you find a connection like this, you have to see it through, I thought. What if Jace is my second chance at true love? Barely 3 months had passed, yet Jace dropped to one knee and presented me with a diamond ring. "Marla, you are the love of my life," he declared passionately. "I want to spend every day with you. Will you marry me?" My pulse roared in my ears. This was happening so fast, but when you know, right? I gazed at Jace's handsome face and eager eyes. He had lit a fire in my once predictable life. Maybe this whirlwind romance was exactly what I needed. "Yes!" I cried. "Yes, Jace, I'll marry you." He swept me up ecstatically in his arms. I clung to him, dizzied by emotions I hadn't felt since high school. My parents were skeptical when they heard the news. "Shouldn't you take things slow?" Mom asked. "Are you sure you really know this man after just a few months?" "I've never been more certain of anything," I insisted. Jace turned on the charm for them. "I know we rushed into this engagement," he admitted, "but from the moment I saw Marla again, I just knew. She makes me want to be a better man." Mom and Dad eventually acquiesced with tentative blessings. We couldn't afford some lavish wedding, so we opted for a small ceremony at the courthouse with our families and closest friends. I used up most of my savings account on a simple white dress and reception dinner afterwards. But Jace looked at me like I was the most beautiful woman in the world as we exchanged vows, pledging our lives to one another. That night, wrapped blissfully in my new husband's arms, I sighed, "I can't believe we're finally married." Jace nestled his face into my hair. "You've made me happier than I ever dreamed possible." As a wedding gift, Mom and Dad helped us buy a little 2-bedroom house in the suburbs. "Consider it an investment in your new life together," Dad said, admiration for Jace replacing his initial hesitations. My heart swelled gazing around our first home, picturing the family we would raise within these walls. Cleo came over the first week after our honeymoon, eager to see how I was settling in as a newlywed. "You look happier than ever," she remarked. "I hope Jace knows how lucky he is." I smiled radiantly. "Oh, he tells me every day." My life felt richer and fuller by the month. As I rode this wave of marital bliss, the rapid pace of it all seemed irrelevant. I had everything I could want: the devoted husband, the cozy home, in-laws' approval. What more could a woman ask for? Doubts were a distant memory now. I had made the right choice marrying Jace. I just knew it. The first year of our marriage passed in a blissful blur, but as the honeymoon glow faded, I began noticing strange behaviors from Jace. He started disappearing for hours at a time, never telling me where he was going. Often he came home late, reeking of alcohol, brushing off my worried questions. One night I awoke to find his side of the bed empty. The clock read 3:14 a.m. Sick with worry, I tried Jace's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Where could he possibly be at this hour? At sunrise, he finally rolled in, clothes disheveled, clearly intoxicated. "Where have you been?" I demanded. "I was scared sick." He just shot me a sheepish grin. "Sorry, babe. The guys convinced me to grab some late-night drinks after work. I should have texted." I might have believed his flimsy excuse if it hadn't happened twice more that week. Jace claimed overtime or drinks with colleagues, but when I phoned his office to check, they insisted he had left at his normal time. One afternoon, I stumbled on receipts stuffed hastily in his pant pockets for a fancy necklace and resort hotel stay. Purchases we certainly couldn't afford on our household income. When I confronted Jace, he turned defensive. "You're snooping now? Unbelievable. It was a work trip. The necklace is for you. I can't have privacy?" He stormed off, leaving me standing there, receipt crumpled in my fist, feeling petty and ashamed. But I couldn't ignore the seed of doubt taking root inside me. The next time Jace disappeared, I drove to that resort and asked if a guest named Jace had checked in recently. "I'm afraid we can't disclose private guest information," the manager said. Before I could plead further, recognition flashed in her eyes. "Wait, I do remember him. Had drinks at our lounge bar with some blonde woman. Looked pretty friendly with her." The revelation knocked the wind out of me. When Jace came home that night, I unleashed on him. "Who is she, Jace? The truth." He had the audacity to look wounded. "What are you talking about? There's no one else, Marla. How could you accuse me of that?" "I followed one of your lies straight to that resort lounge," I retorted. "They told me everything." Jace paced angrily. "So now you're tracking my movements? Have you lost your mind?" He stormed towards the door. I refused to endure this constant interrogation in my own home. As the door slammed shut behind him, it finally sank in. The man I loved was not the man I had married. Where had things gone so horribly wrong? Things between Jace and I went from bad to worse after that explosive argument. He was hardly ever home anymore. Strange charges began appearing on our credit card bill, and I could no longer ignore his chemical odor late at night, the dilated pupils and agitated manner. My husband had entered the world of hard drugs. I confronted Jace as he stumbled through our front door, eyes bloodshot and his shirt rumpled. "Where have you been? Are you using?" He glared defiantly, so I blew off some steam with friends. "You gonna punish me for that, too?" "I saw the credit charges, Jace," I said. "Motel rooms, jewelry. This isn't just a little recreational fun. You're lying, doing God knows what with God knows who." My voice broke on the verge of hysterics. "This isn't the man I married." Jace seized my arms and shoved me against the wall. "You want to know what I do late at night?" he spat. "Sometimes I'd rather be with anyone than lie next to your judgmental accusations. Hell, a good hooker accepts my payment without demanding a play-by-play." I pushed him away, stunned by this vicious stranger in my home. "If you wanted out, you should have said so," I cried. "Not drag this family through your sordid double life." Jace's lip curled into a sneer. "Don't lecture me about family values, not when I bust my ass to provide for this one while you sit around policing my every move." His tirade cut me to the core. In desperation, I threatened divorce, but Jace just laughed coldly. "You'll take me back, just like you always do," he taunted. "Big, strong Marla, so tough yet so gullible." His expression hardened. "But cross me again, and you'll regret it." A chill ran down my spine at those words. That night, while Jace slept, I searched feverishly through his things. Buried deep, I uncovered baggies of white powder, seedy photos of Jace with strange women, thousands in ATM withdrawals. The cold truth stared back. This was no longer my husband, but a hostile imposter who had invaded our lives. In the dead of night, aware I was risking my safety, I began meticulously documenting Jace's more incriminating activities on my phone. a heated phone call with an unknown yelling over payments owed, powder residue on his work desk, unexplained furtive behavior in shadowy alleyways. As the evidence against Jace mounted, so did my agony over the man I had so foolishly entrusted my future to. Worse yet, now merely existing in the same house as Jace filled me with dread, never knowing when his hair-trigger temper might erupt again. Several weeks later, Cleo came over unexpectedly for our usual Saturday girls' brunch. As she chattered away, I mechanically pushed food around my plate, lost in thought, fingers probing the faded bruise on my upper arm hidden beneath a cardigan, a parting gift from Jace during our last scuffle. Cleo's eyes narrowed with concern. "Marla?" Gently she pulled my sweater sleeve back, revealing the ugly purple and yellow mark marring my skin. Her jaw dropped, comprehension dawning. Breaking down at last, I confessed everything. The lying, the cheating, now the fear of my own husband. Cleo enveloped me in her arms as I wept. "Pack your bags," she said firmly. "You're coming home with me." I sprung into action after that painful confrontation with Cleo, determined to shield myself from Jace's downward spiral. His threats still rang in my ears. Crossing him again would end badly for me. First, I stealthily withdrew over 10 grand from our dwindling savings to reopen my old personal checking account. If I made a run for it, I'd need quick access to funds. I stuffed essentials into bags stashed at Cleo's, ready to flee at a moment's notice. My next call was to an old college buddy who now worked in private investigation. I fed Conrad the names of seedy establishments Jace frequented and details of an assault charge during his Chicago days that Jace had conveniently omitted when we reconnected. "I'll run full background checks, dig deeper into recent activity," Conrad assured me. "We'll get clarity on who this guy really is." While anxiously awaiting Conrad's findings, I played the part of dutiful wife at home. Jace remained oblivious to my maneuvers as I continued logging evidence of his misdeeds. Most importantly, I kept close tabs on his packed schedule, noting when he slipped off for his illicit rendezvous. Late one evening, when Jace left for the office, I followed him at a distance to a rundown apartment complex and watched him disappear inside. Conrad's call came just as I witnessed a disheveled woman around Jace's age emerge looking dazed and hollow. Before she spotted me, I hit Conrad's number. "Got back deep records on your husband," he reported grimly. "Guy's in trouble. Mountains of gambling debt, suspected drug trafficking back in Chicago. He's dangerous, Marla." My blood turned to ice. So the man I had welcomed into my bed, my life, my family home, was a complete fraud, capable of God knows what ilk, if I exposed his lies. "There's more." Conrad's voice dropped. "Jace is wanted for assaulting his ex up north. Put her in the hospital with a concussion and 2 broken ribs when she tried leaving him." My knees buckled as Conrad described injuries mirroring my own concealed bruises. I realized then, Jace hadn't just duped me. He had methodically preyed upon my deepest longings to bind me helplessly to him before unleashing his demonic side. And I had danced straight into his trap. "He won't let me walk away easily," I whispered, comprehending my grave misjudgment too late. "Jace will seriously hurt me if he finds out what I know." "We'll make sure that doesn't happen," Conrad said. "I still have law enforcement contacts here. We'll get him arrested safely so you can get free." Wheels turning rapidly, I knew I needed allies for whatever endgame faced me and Jace. Starting with my family's business, as office manager, I discreetly relocated precious client files and redirects company funds into protected accounts, shielding those assets from Jace's grasp. I strong-armed a bank associate into freezing the remaining savings under my name only. And I informed my family attorney on the sly about my situation, urging him to accelerate preparations for divorce. Finally, steeling myself before meeting Cleo later that week, I confessed my plan to set up Jace's downfall, regardless of the risk I faced. She squeezed my hand supportively. "I've got your back, girl, whatever happens next." The bait was set. I had arranged for an anonymous cash payment to be left at a discreet drop location after feeding Jace a fabricated work emergency. If all went according to plan, he would take the money and run, directly into our trap. My group of co-conspirators gathered at a rented office space near the drop point, reviewing our strategy. My family attorney briefed 2 plainclothes officers on Jace's history of assault. Cleo paced anxiously but nodded reassuringly when I caught her eye, and Conrad scanned area security feeds on a laptop, tracking Jace's movements. I peered over Conrad's shoulder as Jace's car appeared, pulling to the location described in the fake text I had shown him earlier. We held our breath, watching the grainy screen as Jace glanced around furtively before retrieving the parcel and speeding off. "He took the bait. Let's move," Conrad confirmed. We piled into 2 unmarked police vehicles, tailing Jace to a seedy motel on the outskirts of town. Undercover cameras captured him exiting his car, parcel tucked under one arm, looking smug as he entered a corner room. It was go time. I waited in the car, heart hammering, while the team stormed in. Even with the element of surprise on our side, the confrontation sounded ugly from my shelter around the corner. Crashing furniture, enraged yelling from Jace, cries of "Get your hands off me!" Then, silence. Moments later, Jace emerged in handcuffs, face mottled with rage as he realized my betrayal. "You set me up, you devious bitch," he roared, fighting against the restraints. "I'll kill you for this, Marla." I met his livid glare unflinchingly, let him spew threats. He was the one in chains now. As officers shoved Jace into the back of a squad car, grim satisfaction swelled within me. We had seized control from my tormentor at last. With the stolen cash and illegal substances found in Jace's possession, plus extensive documentation detailing his shady history, the police had enough evidence to hold him on felony charges. But the most damaging blow to Jace still awaited as part 2 of my plot unfolded. Hours after the motel sting, our town's elite gathered for a lavish business awards gala that I knew Jace planned to attend. Right on cue as the event kicked off, 2 uniformed officers marched through the glitzy ballroom entrance, eliciting audible gasps as they make a beeline for my table. My heart pounded with everyone's eyes upon me. "Marla Brooks, we need you to come with us," the taller officer stated while attendees gawked and murmured. "It's about your husband, ma'am." As instructed, I let out a strangled cry while the officers gently escorted me away. Before disappearing from sight, I glimpsed open-mouthed stares, my name echoing through the crowd. The spectacle was complete. No doubt word of Jace's shame would spread like wildfire. By dawn, his reputation in this town would be destroyed beyond repair. Alone in the ladies' room, I sagged against the wall as relief crashed over me. It was over. My nightmare at long last was finally over. I had reclaimed my life and my future. As tears spilled down my cheeks, an unexpected laugh escaped me. No more hiding, no more looking over my shoulder. I walked out into the night air reborn, unbound, the orange glow of streetlights welcoming me back to the world. In the weeks following Jace's dramatic arrest, I dove headfirst into legal proceedings, determined to nail his coffin shut. Restraining orders, divorce filings, lawsuits against Jace piled up on my attorney's desk as I sought financial and legal reparations. Most crucially, I provided police a full dossier documenting Jace's years of deception. The bruises concealed beneath layers of makeup, frantic texts sent furtively to friends whenever Jace lost his temper. My testimony was damning enough that prosecutors felt confident pursuing domestic assault charges alongside Jace's multiple drug and fraud offenses. When Jace appeared at his preliminary hearing, cocky as ever in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, his smug grin faded as formal charges were presented. His eyes burned with impotent fury when they landed on me sitting resolutely in the front row. The judge set harsh bail terms Jace had no means to meet. As guards dragged my soon-to-be ex back to his cell, his enraged screams echoed through the courtroom. "You'll pay for this, Marla! I promise you, you backstabbing whore!" His words no longer fazed me. They merely sealed his ultimate downfall. In the final divorce decree a month later, the judge took Jace to the cleaners. Due to irrefutable evidence of mental and physical abuse, I was granted our home, remaining household assets, and a hefty alimony settlement given my demonstrated resilience in the face of turmoil. "He deserves worse," Cleo fumed when reviewing the terms. "You went through hell thanks to Jace." I waved her off warily. It's enough knowing karma caught up with him. With multiple felony charges, he'll spend years in prison. That's revenge enough. Rumor mills churned in our small suburban circle about sordid details of Jace's collapsed house of cards. Drugs, cheating, physical assault. My divorce attorney arranged an exclusive tell-all interview for me with the local paper, cementing sympathy on my side. Portray her as the courageous hero who prevailed despite unimaginable betrayal and abuse behind closed doors, my counsel directed. She exposed a dangerous fraud and kept other women safe in the process. I confessed my whole gut-wrenching ordeal to the reporter, the subtle manipulation that seduced me, incremental violence excused away until it became intolerable, the elaborate sting operation that finally halted Jace's reign of terror. I ignored all the red flags because I so badly wanted to believe in second chances, I acknowledged. But some people cannot be saved. Now I advocate for stronger protections to prevent stories like mine. Public reaction to my published account was fiercely supportive. Well-wishers stopped me on the street, praising my bravery. Mothers with teenage daughters made me promise to visit their local high schools, so no other woman falls prey to toxic love like you did. Their faith in me to transform suffering into positive change moved me deeply. From my hometown to the halls of state legislature, I was living proof that even domestic violence victims could reclaim their strength. And redemption never tasted sweeter than the day State of Colorado versus Jace Eaton flashed across my phone screen, signifying the final death knell to my tormentor's devastation. Justice was served at last. With the smoke cleared from legal battles, I shifted focus to piecing my life back together. The house Jace and I had once shared became my solitary refuge, as I grieved the man I thought I married versus the monster revealed. Bitterness still arose occasionally over wasted years chained to Jace's deception. But anger no longer controlled me. Now purpose filled my days instead. Through counseling, I found wisdom and closure. My therapist inspired me to channel hardship into uplifting other women trapped in abusive cycles. Transform your testimony into empowerment, she urged. Let your story give hopeless victims the courage to break free. I began volunteering for a nonprofit domestic violence group, then joined their board to guide strategy. Within a year, I had spearheaded a broad outreach campaign called Rise Above that brought survivor stories into high schools and colleges. I shared my journey escaping Jace's grip to rapt audiences, refusing to gloss over uglier parts. See this scar under my eye? I would point out, a relic of Jace hurling a glass object. I once mistook rage for passion, but violence should never be normalized for the sake of love. My mission to advocate for at-risk women soon grew into a nonprofit venture I founded called New Dawn. We ran empowerment seminars, offered pro bono counseling and legal help, even temporarily housed women fleeing dangerous homes. 3 years later, New Dawn had expanded into 3 counties with a paid staff of 10 running daily operations. We opened new emergency shelters annually. I rubbed shoulders with state politicians and prominent activists as a respected leader in the field. One day, Cleo forwarded me a news article titled "Disgraced Businessman Sent Back to Jail," featuring Jace's scowling mugshot. I skimmed details of his failed parole attempt after serving time for drug charges tied to my case. A small flare of satisfaction rose in me knowing Florida penitentiaries would remain Jace's miserable dwelling. New Dawn got a shout-out in that story on Jace, Cleo added proudly. They credited your whole movement bringing light to domestic abuse issues locally. My eyes misted reading glowing praise for our collective impact. Perhaps my battered old soul still had some healing left to do. But staring at Jace's hardened criminal face, I felt only detachment, like gazing upon a stranger now. His power to haunt me had faded long ago. The chapter of my life defined by Jace's menacing presence had long since closed. In its place, a confident visionary and nurturer of broken spirits had emerged, one for whom peace and purpose now shaped days where uncertainty and fear once dwelled. Redemption manifests in many forms. Rarely does it arrive as we envisioned. But my second chance was never sweeter. What's for dinner? Jackson's words pierced the silence of our tense kitchen, his tone cold and dismissive as always. I froze, the venom in his voice draining the joy from my soul once again. How far we had fallen from those early dreamy days in Chicago when his smile filled me with delight. Now every word he uttered struck me with dread. I said nothing, responding only with silence. My hatred for the stranger Jackson had become sitting like a stone in my heart. He clicked his tongue, shaking his head as he strode out, granting me a few more minutes of hollow peace. My thoughts drifted to 5 years ago, when Jackson would surprise me with flowers and gifts, when our newborn son Eli would gaze at us like we held the secrets of the universe. I remembered the perfumed scent of happiness that seemed to follow us wherever we went. How blinded I was by illusions. The shrill ring of my phone cut through the silence. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, no doubt ready to yet again make veiled accusations about my failings as a wife and mother. "Avalon, I haven't seen my precious Eli in over a week," Eleanor complained. "I miss my darling boy." Her words were sweet, but her meaning clear. She wanted to see Eli without me sullying their visit. My role was to produce her prized grandchild, then vanish into the background. "We can arrange something soon," I said evenly, refusing to grovel at her feet and beg for scraps of affection. I would not let her control me any longer. That weekend, I planned an escape with Eli to visit my parents' farm, desperate for even a day's reprieve from the choking venom of Jackson and his manipulative mother. As soon as we arrived, Eli relaxed into the warm embrace of my parents, free from the smothering weight of the Stanhopes' expectations. Yet Jackson still found a way to ruin even this small oasis of peace. His barrage of demanding calls reminded me I did not have the luxury of freedom. I was trapped, bound by vows and violence. My only hope was Eli, my beloved boy, whose smile sustained me. As long as I had him, I could survive anything. When we returned, Eleanor's talons were out. She scolded Eli for being away so long, glaring at me as if I had committed an unforgivable sin by spending a weekend away. My son's eyes pooled with tears as she smothered him. This was my life now, a battlefield where my only ammunition was patience and resilience. I had to stay strong for Eli. Little did I know Jackson had schemes of his own brewing as he spun his web of lies against me. My friend Harper called, gushing about this amazing new widower she was seeing. My blood turned to ice when she described her whirlwind romance with none other than Jackson himself. Rage, betrayal, and humiliation tore through me like shrapnel. For this final treachery, Jackson would pay the ultimate price. My hands trembled as I set my phone down, Harper's bubbly voice still echoing in my mind. The initial shock gave way to anger as the reality of Jackson's betrayal sank in. My husband, the man I had built dreams with, now wooed my own friend behind my back. I had to warn Harper, though exposing Jackson's deception would no doubt ignite his rage towards me. My son Eli played on the living room floor as I composed myself before making the call, drawing strength from his innocence. "Avalon, I was just talking about you," Harper chirped. I cut through her enthusiasm sharply. "The man you're seeing, what's his name?" Jay Stanhope. Why do you ask?" she replied, surprise coloring her tone. Bile rose in my throat as my suspicions were confirmed. Jackson had spun a web of lies, preying on Harper's longing for love. I exposed his deception plainly, my voice quivering with anger and pain. A heavy silence followed, the weight of betrayal hanging between two friends. When I told Jackson I had uncovered his deceit, his expression hardened to stone. Eleanor watched with thinly veiled amusement as he exploded. "You had no right to meddle in my affairs," he bellowed. "Harper meant nothing, but your jealousy has cost me a valuable business connection." His callous words deepened the chasm between us. I was no longer his wife, just an obstacle to be demolished. Eleanor smirked, the chaos only furthering her twisted hold over her damaged son. In that moment I understood. It was time to leave. There was nothing left to salvage here. I had only endured this emotional warfare for my son's sake, but now I realized no child should see his mother thus degraded. As Jackson's tirade continued, I calmly packed our bags, comforting my confused and frightened son. Soon Eli would be safe and free from these toxins. I whispered a prayer of thanks that my parents had offered their farm as a refuge. Their warm embrace was medicine for my battered soul. Yet the Stanhope's venom followed us even to this pastoral escape. Eleanor and Jackson barraged me with calls and threats, promising to take Eli away for good. As my son played happily with my father's baby goats, blissfully unaware of the battle raging over him, my mother spoke words that would shape the course of my vengeance. "Avalon, you must go back. Record their threats, document their lies, gather allies. Only then can you defeat them and free Eli from their clutches forever." I realized she was right. I had to shift from victim to warrior, or they would hunt me to the ends of the earth. If protecting my son meant destroying those who sought to harm us, so be it. I now understood the power I held as mother of Jackson's prized heir. Checkmate was still possible, no matter how ruthless the opponents. Jackson had dealt the first blow, but I would strike the final one. This was now a game of kings and pawns, where survivors take the prize. My son's future happiness hinged on my next moves. Failure was not an option. Too much was at stake. The kings would soon face their downfall. Returning to the battlefield took every ounce of my courage. Jackson's mask of civility had finally fallen, exposing the monster that lurked beneath. Home was now a minefield of emotional traps and verbal assaults. But my mother's words armed me for the fight ahead. I knew what needed to be done. I began documenting their deceit like an investigator, recording conversations, keeping a detailed log of Eleanor and Jackson's threats and manipulation. Though still nursing my wounds, I found purpose in preparing for the trials ahead. Justice would be done, no matter how powerful my adversaries imagined themselves to be. During a tense family dinner, Eleanor's snide comments pushed me to the edge. That Harper girl Jackson took up with, I knew she was familiar. Wasn't she your little friend, Avalon? Bile rose in my throat, but I simply gave a tight smile. I would not give her the satisfaction of seeing my pain. Jackson said nothing, suddenly finding his steak fascinating. After they left, I gently asked Eli about his time with his grandmother. The flower of innocence in his eyes wilted. She scares me sometimes, Mommy. Grandpa yells a lot, too. I don't like it there. His words ignited my fury once more. How dare they trample my son's fragile spirit and destroy the safety of his world? Jackson's mask fully fell away when I confronted him about his emotional abuse of our son. He shouted and slammed his fist on the table inches from my face. You turned my own son against me. I always knew you were inadequate as a mother. No wonder he prefers you. Eli began crying as his father raged. Seeing my son's tears, I swore Jackson would pay for every second of heartbreak he had caused. The next morning, as Jackson left on another suspicious business trip, I asked sweetly about his plans. His look of surprise at the sudden affection in my voice was satisfying. Little did he know I had installed tracking software on his phone and recording devices in his car. His villainy would soon be his undoing. My parents provided comfort from the emotional battlefield. Their embrace nourished my battered but unbroken spirit. Dad taught Eli to milk cows and make jam, simple joys that erased Jackson's poison. As I tucked my slumbering boy into bed, he murmured, "I feel safe here, Mommy." His peaceful sleep was answer to 100 prayers. When uncovering Jackson's location through the tracking software, I noted he had traveled to Harperstown for a suspicious overnight visit. The trap was set perfectly now. I could use his tryst as irrefutable evidence against him during divorce proceedings. Soon Eli and I would break free from these toxic chains forever. My chance for absolute victory was close at hand. I imagined Jackson and his mother utterly demolished by what I now held against them: videos, records, and witness accounts. They had played with fire by challenging me, never imagining the phoenix that could rise from my ashes. Now doom awaited them as karma prepared her devastating blow. My next family dinner was a viper's nest of passive aggression and thinly veiled threats. Eleanor made snide comments about my simple meatloaf, though just a year ago she had praised the same recipe. Jackson scrolled through his phone, not bothering to pretend interest in his wife and son any longer. I simply ate in silence, my quiet fury simmering beneath a mask of perfect calm. As I cleared the dishes after the tense meal, Eleanor cornered me. "Avalon, don't you realize you're preventing Jackson from reaching his full potential? The boy needs a proper partner, one from the right kind of family." Her words poured acid into my heart, but I did not flinch. I think a divorce would be best for everyone. Jackson has already found a more suitable match. At this final insult, something broke free inside me, a righteous rage against injustice that blocked out all fear. Meeting Eleanor's glare calmly, I replied, "If you try to take my son from me, I will reduce your entire family to ashes." Shock registered on her face. She clearly underestimated the strength a mother finds when defending her cub. Returning home, I ignored Jackson's drunken ramblings, mentally preparing for war. My nerves were iron. I felt no trace of doubt. Securing Eli's future meant annihilating my enemies by any means necessary. I had already endured the worst pain they could inflict. Their blows only honed my will to survive. I edited my documentation, tightening it into an impenetrable legal trap guaranteed to favor me in court. Jackson's credibility would be shattered, Eleanor's manipulation exposed. Justice would soon arrive on swift wings. Over the next weeks, I wore a disguise of normalcy while secretly meeting lawyers and a private detective to build my case. Arthur, an old family friend on the force, provided legal advice I knew Jackson would never see coming. Weeks of planning in secret were about to yield dark and brutal fruit. Soon after Jackson left for a work emergency, no doubt code for meeting Harper, I followed him at a distance in a rented car. As expected, he drove straight to her apartment where she welcomed him with a kiss. The sight turned my stomach, but I captured images to twist the knife during divorce proceedings. My evidence folder grew thicker by the day. When Jackson returned the next morning reeking of Harper's perfume, I calmly informed him I wanted full custody of Eli and would be seeking a restraining order. A satisfying flicker of panic flashed across his arrogant face. The predator had just realized he had become prey. My mercy towards him evaporated like dewdrops in this moment. All that remained was the satisfied hum of sweet revenge. Jackson exploded into wrathful threats when I revealed my legal plans, confirming once and for all the true ugliness festering within him. He slammed his fists and overturned furniture, spewing graphic ways he would make me suffer. As he raged, I simply tapped a button on my phone to start an audio recording. His venomous words would seal his fate in court. I stood motionless as his anger crashed over me like waves over a rock. When his tirade finally exhausted itself, I stepped forward calmly. I once loved the man you pretended to be, but now I see the truth. You will never hurt me or my son again. Jackson's face contorted into a hateful sneer. You poisonous witch! I should have crushed your spirit years ago. My mother always warned you would betray me. He turned and stormed away, no doubt seeking solace between Harper's sheets. I had known divorce would provoke his inner demons, but I welcomed the confrontation. The law would grant me sole custody the moment I presented a fragment of the evidence I now held against Jackson and Eleanor. Justice would be done. In the quiet aftermath, I noticed Eli watching from the hallway, holding his stuffed bear in fear. I enveloped my son in fierce love, sadness mingling with relief that he had witnessed his father's true colors. Don't worry, my darling. We are going to be happy and safe soon. I promise. Our new apartment provided refuge as the divorce exploded into being. On my lawyer's advice, I took Eli and moved out quickly, leaving Jackson snarling threats in our empty house. The legal team efficiently turned my evidence against my husband and mother-in-law into an airtight case for full custody of my son. Meanwhile, Jackson spiraled into self-destruction, drunk and violent. His business trips to meet Harper did little to numb his rage at losing control of me and his prized son. His mother desperately tried to restrain his reckless behavior, fearing damage to her family's esteemed social status. But the foundations of her carefully curated image were cracking. Soon Jackson would bring the whole rotting edifice crumbling down. Harper tried calling me, stuttering apologies filled with excuses about Jackson manipulating her loneliness. I simply wished her well with a smile. She was not to blame for my husband's deceit. In truth, I pitied her, for Jackson would surely break her heart too once he had extracted all he needed from her, then toss her aside. Berating Harper would serve no purpose, so I focused on my true goal, severing all ties to my abusers. The turning point arrived during an ugly custody hearing, where my ironclad documentation and audio evidence demolished any defense Jackson tried to mount. As he fumed, Eleanor screeched accusations, and their lawyer sat in stunned silence. I maintained perfect, smiling calm. I had played the long game masterfully, luring them into revealing their own wretchedness before systematically destroying them. Soon Eli and I would be reborn from the ashes of the Stanhopes' smoldering ruin. The day of reckoning arrived with poetical perfection on Thanksgiving. I had invited Harper along with Jackson and Eleanor, presenting the image of a perfect hostess. My real purpose was setting the stage for their final demolishment. I had told Harper part of the truth, that Jackson had deceived us both and was still clinging to her. But she foolishly insisted on seeing the best in him, still enchanted by his hollow charm. Well, her naive blindness would end today. My parents joined us, bolstering my drive for justice. My evidence file and lawyer's number waited in my room, ready for use. I had forwarded videos of Jackson's raging threats along with records of Eleanor's manipulation to key contacts as insurance. If I did not make it through today unscathed, their own ugliness would trigger mutually assured destruction. When the Stanhopes arrived, I received them warmly, playing the role of forgiving ex-wife to lure them into complacency. Jackson overplayed the charm while Eleanor critiqued the menu I had slaved over, predictably ungrateful. During dinner, I made sure to position Harper beside Jackson. My friend giggled and blushed whenever he whispered flirtatiously in her ear. Watching them, my family members bristled with outrage on my behalf. I gave them subtle signals to wait as baiting my trap. Justice would be served cold. Dessert was interrupted by the ring of Jackson's phone. He glanced at the screen and silenced it quickly. But my hawk-eyed mother caught a glimpse of the name Amanda with a heart emoji before it disappeared from view. I seized the moment, my fury channeled into an eagle's deadly resolve. Looking directly at Harper, I asked gently, "Jackson, darling, who was that calling?" All eyes froze on my husband as he gulped nervously. Turning to my friend, I continued, "Harper, do you know if Jackson sees other women?" My words hung in the air like a guillotine blade, because he certainly lied to both of us. As understanding dawned on Harper's face, her shock quickly morphed into humiliation and heartbreak. As she erupted in sobs, my family surrounded her in solidarity, while Eleanor watched in horror as her web of lies fell apart. Jackson sat mute and stone-faced at the unraveling of his schemes. The leading man had lost control of his plot. I ended the final act by placing my evidence binder on the table. As my parents comforted Harper, I calmly informed Jackson he would sign the divorce settlement immediately, granting me full custody. Refuse, and this evidence destroys what remains of your life. My words rang with cold authority. Justice had been served. In the aftermath, Jackson's world collapsed with satisfying swiftness. My evidence proved his deceit was far more extensive than I had even realized. The detailed records showed him shamelessly manipulating numerous women for money and status, with Harper and I as just two in a long string of victims of his scams. With his credibility and social standing annihilated, Jackson descended rapidly into recklessness. He was fired from his prestigious family firm after showing up drunk to an important client meeting. Reports soon surfaced of him getting into fistfights at bars and clubs. His engagement to longtime girlfriend Amanda ended bitterly amid cheating allegations. Eleanor, once so proud and domineering, became a social pariah, shunned for enabling her son's abusive behavior. The Stanhope family name lay in tatters. She retreated from public view, suddenly plagued by poor health with no one left to dote on her. My mother commented it was likely her heart had shriveled so completely that her body could no longer sustain itself. I felt no pity watching the old crone reap what she had sown. With the Stanhopes decimated, I focused fully on rebuilding my life with Eli. My divorce settlement allowed me to buy a lovely home near my parents, where Eli and I discovered tranquility once more. I returned to work at the local library, finding meaning in simple joys and community after years trapped in toxic chaos. My only lingering anger was towards the justice system that had allowed Jackson to inflict maximum damage on me despite mounds of evidence. The lawyer fees had nearly bankrupted me even as Jackson walked free with light penalties. I now understood how power and privilege stacked the odds, forcing victims to fight tooth and nail for basic dignity. Harper remained a steadfast friend, helping me advocate for legal support for abused women struggling to escape manipulative partners. Her warmth and loyalty proved she was a victim as well. Together we found healing and meaning. One morning I arrived early to open the library and noticed a delivery by the back door. A beautiful bouquet of flowers waited in a vase with an unsigned note reading simply, "Please forgive me." I recognized Harper's handwriting immediately. We cried together as 8 years of pain and betrayal washed away, leaving only relief that the long nightmare was over. A week later, my lawyer informed me that several women allegedly assaulted by Jackson had successfully pressed charges against him based on my evidence. He now awaited trial behind bars. The country club playboy had lost everything from his kingdom to his freedom itself. Justice had caught up to him at long last, as I knew it would. Watching Eli dance carefreely at my parents' summer picnic, his laughter healing old wounds, I knew I had reclaimed what mattered most. The predators who once haunted us would never steal our joy again. The past was just a fading nightmare banished by the dawn. The voicemail was like a sledgehammer through glass. I stared at my phone, pulse racing, hands trembling. It couldn't be. Not after all this time. Marissa, hey, it's Declan. I'm back in town tonight and thought maybe I could crash at our place. We should talk. Our place. The nerve. I drew a ragged breath, gripping the countertop to steady myself. 3 years of rebuilding my life alone, brick by painful brick. 3 years of providing for our daughter while he gallivanted to find himself. And now he thought he could just waltz right back in? Mom, you okay? I blinked hard. Elise stood watching me cautiously, backpack slung over one small shoulder. I managed a shaky smile. Yeah, sweetheart. Go on, or you'll be late. After she left, I sagged against the refrigerator, waves of nausea and anger crashing over me. This wasn't happening. Not now, when Elise and I finally had stability. When I finally felt whole again. I replayed his message. Bile rising. Make some space for me. Unbelievable. What about the space he'd left in our lives when he abandoned his family? When he disappeared without warning or child support? Did he expect me to forget so easily? To pretend our years of hardship hadn't happened? My hands curled into fists as tears burned my eyes. I swiped them away roughly. No. I was done crying over that man. I'd spent too many nights consoling our daughter when she asked where Daddy was, why he didn't love us anymore. Too many days working 2 jobs just to keep us afloat, selling memories to pay for groceries. My knuckles whitened, the anguish and self-doubt I'd endured when he vanished without explanation. It had nearly destroyed me. But Elise had needed me, so I'd carried on. Alone and exhausted, but carrying on nonetheless. And slowly, the wounds began to heal. The nights grew easier, my daughter's laughter more frequent. I gazed around my tidy kitchen, summoning the resolve that had held us together all this time. No, I would not let Declan unravel everything now. Not when we'd finally found stable ground. He gave up the right to be part of our lives long ago. I reached for the phone with quiet determination, deleted his message. Then I blocked his number. Whatever he wanted, neither Elise nor I owed him a moment more of our time or sanity. The past was done. I had a PTA meeting to plan for. Parent conferences next week. A little girl who needed me focused and fully present. I straightened my shoulders, that familiar strength rooting into my bones once more. I slid the casserole into the oven, forehead creased in thought. Elise perched at the table coloring, ponytail bobbing as she hummed. Watching her, the familiar ache bloomed in my chest. She was the mirror image of Declan, those wide, dark eyes, the spray of freckles across her nose. Even her mannerisms echoed his, down to the way she chewed her lip when concentrating. My jaw tightened. He should be here sharing this scene, not off chasing self-serving dreams while his daughter grew up without a father. I'd spent endless hours listening to Elise wonder why Daddy didn't tuck her in at night or attend her school plays and piano recitals. Why he didn't want us anymore. When will Daddy visit? She'd asked endlessly those first bleak years. Her small face etched with confusion. Doesn't he love me? And I could only gather her close, choking back angry tears as I whispered platitudes and smoothed her hair. Because how could I explain that her beloved father had thrown us aside without warning, that he'd left us drowning under a tidal wave of bills, our accounts bone dry? I still recalled removing her from ballet class in tears because the payments had become impossible. The shame and despair of those days haunted me. Yet despite it all, Elise's innocent faith in Declan persisted. Night after night, she'd gaze at the stars, making fervent wishes for his return. My heart fractured a little more with each tiny prayer. And now here he was, waltzing back as if no time had passed, acting as if he deserved access to our lives. I gritted my teeth, fury and bitterness roiling through me. What gave him the right after all the unanswered calls and attorney's letters demanding child support, which he'd ignored completely? Did he comprehend even an ounce of the agony he'd put us through? Elise glanced up just then, grinning broadly as she held up her drawing. Look, Mommy, it's you and me, and Daddy. Do you think he'll come visit for Christmas? My stomach twisted at the hope glowing from her sweet face. Gathering my composure with effort, I managed a tense smile. We'll have to wait and see, love. Now, want to help stir the corn? As she trailed behind me eagerly to the stove, I squared my shoulders with quiet resolve. Declan may believe he could resurrect his role as husband and father on a whim, but I would not stand by and let him trample our healing hearts again. I woke with a start, momentarily confused by the pre-dawn light filtering through the blinds. Then the memories came flooding back. Declan's message. His audacity after all this time. I groaned, scrubbing at my gritty eyes with the heels of my hands. Despite my exhaustion, sleep had eluded me most of the night. My mind kept voice conjuring emotions I thought I'd firmly buried. Anger, disbelief, the sting of that old betrayal. Sometime near dawn, I must have finally drifted off, too spent for my churning thoughts to keep at bay any longer. But now morning had arrived, heralding the start of another day I'd have to battle recurring ghosts. I dragged myself from bed, wincing at the throbbing behind my temples. In the muted light, I studied my reflection as I dressed for work. The drawn face staring back evoked the battered young woman I'd been in the aftermath of Declan's abandonment. The one who had cried herself to sleep for months, struggling to provide for a heartbroken little girl despite the yawning abyss where my savings used to be. I'd walked a tortuous road to regain my footing after he left. I couldn't resurrect that buried anguish now. Wouldn't. In the kitchen, I braced my hands against the smooth countertop, gathering my resolve. When Declan split, I'd eventually pick myself up and put one determined foot in front of the other until I could stand tall again. I owed it to myself and Elise to keep marching forward, not get dragged backwards by my ex-husband's latest whim. As I filled travel mugs with coffee, fury simmered through my veins. How dare he presume to still have any place in our lives? To believe he could breeze in and out whenever it suited him with no thought to those left scraping up the wreckage? No, I refused to permit it. Not this time. If Declan imagined he'd receive anything besides cold resentment from me, then reality would give him a brisk wake-up call. I would cordially inform him once that he'd extinguished any rights as a husband or father long ago. The aftermath was his mess to wade through. Elise wandered sleepy-eyed into the kitchen just then, her dark curls riotous. I smoothed them gently, heart clenching at her sweetness as I pressed a bowl of cereal into her hands. Whatever Declan's reasons for returning, I bore responsibility now for shielding my daughter from additional hurt. She'd endured enough confusion and disappointment already. This time I would guard the fragile new life we'd built, fortified by hard-won wisdom and resolve. Let Declan make his excuses elsewhere. When it came to my family, the door was firmly closed. I slid the key into the lock, balancing a bag of groceries on one hip. As the door swung open, I froze. There was Declan, sprawled on my living room sofa as if he belonged there. Watching TV and drinking a beer like this was any regular Tuesday night. The bag thudded to the floor. Declan glanced over, irritation flashing across his face. "Hey, careful with the bruise. Get out," I hissed through gritted teeth. Inside, emotions churned violently. "You have no right to be here." With exaggerated calm, Declan killed the TV and arched an eyebrow. "Is that any way to greet your husband after 3 years?" "Ex-husband," I spat. "Or did you miss the divorce paperwork while you were off finding yourself? Now get out before I call the police." Declan had the audacity to appear wounded. "Come on, Marissa. Can't we talk about this civilly? I've missed you two." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Missed us? Is that what you call completely abandoning your family? Refusing to help provide for your daughter even after the court-mandated child support?" Red-hot anger licked through me when he merely shrugged. I was in a tough financial spot myself, trying to get my business off the ground. And that justified leaving Elise and I destitute? My voice shook. For us to struggle just to survive while you gallivanted around pursuing your dreams? Declan's nonchalant mask slipped at the verbal slap, eyes narrowing dangerously. "Watch it, Marissa," he warned, crossing his arms. "You're one to talk anyway. Didn't take you long to replace me, now did it?" "Get out," I repeated through clenched teeth. I trembled with the urge to claw that smug expression off his face. "Whatever pathetic reasons you've conjured to explain abandoning your family, I don't want to hear them. It's too late. You're dead to us." Declan shot to his feet then, features twisting. For an instant I thought he might get violent and tensed. but after a seething moment he seemed to get himself under control. "You can play hardball all you want, but I'm back for good," he snarled. "We're still married in the eyes of God, even if you decided to throw away our sacred vows. Don't think this is over." He stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I jumped before sagging back against the wall, shaking all over. My pulse roared in my ears. This was bad. Declan had never handled not getting his way well, and by his behavior just now, he intended to make things very ugly before he gave up again. I had to protect Elise. Bereft of immediate options, I could only slide to the floor in front of the bolted door, head in hands. The peaceful life I'd rebuilt from ashes was crumbling before my eyes. And this time, I feared Declan himself posed the greatest threat to my daughter's well-being. I ushered Elise into the apartment, scanning the rooms cautiously. My spine prickled as I secured deadbolts and flipped lights, peering into shadowy corners. But the rooms appeared untouched. In the kitchen, I checked the locks on the back door and windows, pulse thrumming. Declan still had a key, and his words keep echoing through my mind. "We're still married in God's eyes. This isn't over." A noise made me whirl. Elise hovered at the fridge, features pinched. "Mom, what's going on? Why are you acting so weird?" "It's nothing, sweetie." I attempted a reassuring smile that felt more like a grimace. A worried 8-year-old didn't need to know her father had basically threatened us. Not yet anyway. I started dinner preparations, jaw tight. Declan's reappearance had cracked open the fault lines I thought healed over. The security I'd rebuilt for Elise now threatened to crumble thanks to him barreling back in, all arrogant entitlement instead of remorse for his absence. After demolishing grilled cheese sandwiches, Elise wandered off to finish homework, subdued. My chest tightened watching her go. She'd already endured enough disappointment where her father was concerned. She deserved consistency and stability now, not Declan's melodrama and empty promises. As I washed up the supper dishes, resolve hardened my spine. Elise came first, period. For 3 years, I'd mastered that balance alone. Now the stakes were higher, but my commitment hadn't wavered. I would fiercely protect the peaceful life we'd carved out, even if confronting Declan's toxicity was inevitable to secure our safety. Right on cue, an insistent knock rattled the front door. I squared my shoulders and stalked through the living room as fury kindled in my chest. Tonight, Declan would receive his final warning. Either stay away for good or force my hand against him legally to guarantee Elise's well-being. I wrenched open the door, angry words dying on my lips. Declan sagged against the doorframe, clutching a mostly empty bottle of Jack Daniels. Behind him, the front yard was strewn with our overturned trash cans, contents scattered across dead grass. My heart sank at the spiteful spectacle. His bloodshot gaze raked over me, features twisting into an ugly sneer. "Hey there, gorgeous," he slurred. "Gonna invite your husband in for a drink?" His cackling laughter raised the hair on my arms. Disgust and alarm warred through me at his deteriorated state. Declan had always been a mean drunk, but this went beyond rational behavior. Had his years away unraveled him completely? Over his hulking shoulder, I registered our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Tavers, peering wide-eyed from her cracked door down the hall. Heart in my throat, I blocked Declan's lurching entry with my shoulder. "You need to leave," I warned sharply. "Now, before I call the police." His hand shot out, shoving me hard. I stumbled backwards with a gasp as he bowled his way inside, bottle dangling from one fist. Mrs. Tavers hastily shut her door. Declan invaded my space, liquor fumes and unhinged fury burning from him. "Get Elise. We're going home." I retreated slowly toward the kitchen, pulse thundering. No way would I let this monster near my daughter tonight. The baseball bat still leaned just inside the pantry. If persuasion failed, I knew with sudden cool clarity I would use it without hesitation. "Get back," I warned, fingers wrapped tightly around the bat's handle. Declan blinked slowly, swaying, his lip curled when he registered the weapon. "Gonna take a swing at me, Riss? Didn't peg you as the violent type." I angled my chin defiantly. "I'll do what it takes to protect my daughter. Now leave." His mocking grin faded. Belligerence hardened his eyes. "I told you we're going home. As a family." He took a threatening step forward. Outrage spiked through me. "We stopped being a family when you abandoned us." Declan roared and hurled the Jack Daniels bottle. I ducked instinctively and it exploded against the wall, amber liquid raining down. "Don't you dare speak to me that way," he bellowed, spraying spittle. Ungrateful after everything I did for you. He lunged then. I swung wildly with the bat, the hollow thwack of solid wood connecting with flesh and bone echoing through the chaotic room. Declan stumbled sideways with a garbled shout, crashing into the upended kitchen table. Chest heaving, I clutched the bat in trembling hands. Sick adrenaline flooded my system at having struck him. But the darkened glint in Declan's eyes as he dragged himself upright spurred only stark purpose: protect Elise at all costs. I darted into the hallway, intent on barricading us in my bedroom. But Elise stood frozen outside her room, features white with shock above the rumpled unicorn tee she still hadn't outgrown. Behind me, Declan roared incoherently. "Get back inside," I urged her desperately. She remained rooted in place, tears rising. "Why is Daddy so angry? Why did you hit him?" Her small voice quavered with confusion and fear. I grabbed her shoulders, my own vision blurring fast. "Oh, baby, I'm sorry. Daddy isn't well right now. I had to get her to safety. Everything will be all right, but you need to." Enraged bellowing shredded the rest of my plea. Elise's eyes rounded in dismay a split second before I felt myself airborne. We crashed excruciatingly into the linen closet doors. My head ricocheted off unforgiving drywall and stars exploded across my vision. I slumped in dazed agony, ears ringing. Somewhere through the nauseating haze I heard Elise shrieking. I struggled to sit up, gaping through swelling eye sockets at Declan's hulking form stomping toward my cringing daughter. "No!" I choked out through the inferno raging inside my skull. Elise backpedaled swiftly into her room, but Declan caught her door before it slammed shut. I dragged my leaden body across the carpet, screaming her name. Declan reappeared, massive hand engulfing the back of Elise's neck as she sobbed wildly. "We're leaving!" He spat, face mottled and nose gushing crimson down his scruffy chin. He looked unhinged and dangerous at a cellular level. "Should have come willingly." Through the neighbors' shouting and Elise's hysterical pleas for me, icy resolve solidified, eclipsing everything else. I would not lose my daughter tonight. If stopping Declan meant killing him with my bare hands, then so be it. "Marissa Walsh?" I glanced up from the forms the nurse had given me. 2 officers stood in the doorway, the same pair who'd responded when Declan tried kidnapping Elise. I straightened gingerly. "Yes?" Beside me, Elise eyed them warily from beneath an ice pack as she clutched my hand. "Sorry to intrude. We apprehended your ex attempting to break into your apartment again. He'd managed to pick the back lock. Claims the place still belongs to him." I pressed trembling fingers to my lips, pulse spiking. Elise huddled closer with a whimper. My mouth went dry. "What happens now?" The officers traded looks. "Unfortunately, since his name is still on the lease, we can't charge him with breaking and entering. But we brought him in for the outstanding warrant regarding the assault and attempted kidnapping incident." My knees went loose. No immediate reprieve from Declan's harassment even with him jailed? It wasn't remotely fair or just. I scooped Elise close as she started crying softly. The officers shifted, pained empathy plain on their faces. "We know it's not ideal," the younger one offered quietly, "but our hands are tied legally from keeping him away for good, unless—" His gaze cut to Elise's battered face and anger flashed across his youthful features. "Look, the judge set Declan's bail prohibitively high, and we notified CPS about your daughter's condition, plus the previous child support non-compliance." He hesitated. "I probably shouldn't say this, but we also conducted a thorough search of that apartment after arresting your ex. Let's just state that he won't be making bail anytime soon." A violent tremor ripped through me. Whatever contraband they'd uncovered didn't matter. Only guaranteeing Elise's safety from this monster counted now. I focused dully on the officers' solemn faces. "What should we do? Declan made threats about coming after us again. Can you stop him?" Their grave expressions reflected what I already knew deep down, that the legal system could only constrain someone like my ex-husband for so long. Sooner or later he'd charm his way free again, and next time he might successfully spirit Elise away forever. A bone-deep wariness engulfed me. I'd devoted years to painstakingly rebuilding security for my daughter after Declan's shattering betrayal. Now, despite police intervention and restraining orders, his abuse and manipulation still dominated our lives from behind bars. I tuned back in as the officers offered platitudes about changing the locks and extra patrols near our apartment until Declan's case went to trial. My fingers curled protectively through Elise's baby-fine hair, worthless stopgaps when dealing with a narcissist like my ex. As they left, I kissed Elise's damp cheek, voice unwavering. "This ends now, baby girl. Let's go pack. I won't risk him finding us again." Leaving everything familiar behind meant nothing if it secured her safety. I would burn cities to ash first before letting Declan destroy Elise's life further. 6 months later. Name? I met the bored gaze of the station guard evenly. Marissa Walsh, and my daughter Elise. A flicker of interest crossed the woman's face. Message received. She remembered the high-profile case. "Sign here. I'll buzz you in." Elise shifted nervously, confusion and curiosity playing across her delicate features beneath summer freckles as we were escorted inside. I gave her a gentle, reassuring squeeze. My heels clicked decisively across the grimy tile, syncing with the thunderous cadence of my pulse. Anticipation and simmering rage kindled with every step nearer to the secure visitation room. Declan's sentencing was today on multiple charges, from kidnapping to possession with intent to distribute. The fastidious search of our old apartment had unveiled a cornucopia of illicit substances and dealings. The officers who'd tipped me off about the contraband discoveries had advised us not to attend the trial given the volatility. But I needed closure. Elise, too, though she didn't fully understand that yet. I'd shielded her these months from Declan's continued threats and maneuverings. Instead, I'd channeled frantic energy into moving us cross-country, into my brother's guest room back east while I slowly rebuilt stability again. But before leaving that chaotic former life forever, Elise and I deserved finality. So I'd made arrangements to see Declan one last time on his way to sentencing, to make certain he grasped the damage inflicted and pain caused were irrevocable, that his poison could never taint our future happiness, if I had any say. The guard ushered us into a small room empty except for a grimy table and plastic chairs. Elise eyed me uncertainly. I managed an encouraging wink just as the door reopened. Flanked by 2 impassive guards, Declan shuffled inside. His contemptuous bravado had evaporated between the damning evidence and prospect of hard time. He seemed diminished in his orange jumpsuit, face at once familiar and that of a defeated stranger. Exactly how I wanted him. I rose slowly. Behind me, Elise fidgeted, anxiety rolling off her. I nodded once at Declan but addressed my daughter gently. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're just here to say goodbye before they take him away for a long time." Declan blanched. I skewered him with smoldering satisfaction, letting venom etch my words. "Did you want to tell Daddy why we're leaving him forever?" When Elise just peered at the floor miserably, I stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Well then, let me do the honors." I proceeded to clinically detail every vile deed and repercussion, reveling in Declan's shrinking frame. I spoke Elise's pain, my terror, and destitution. By the end, Declan appeared utterly extinguished. I leaned in, breath hot on his pallid cheek. "She's free of you, they both are." I kissed Elise's hair, breathing in her goodness and light, before spinning sharply away. Behind me, Declan sputtered useless protests, truly a master of nothing any longer. I strode into sunshine without a backwards glance, Elise's small hand tucked firmly inside mine.